Welcome to Financials with Ahawo. Thank you for making time to listen. We're continuing with our podcast, Financial Wellness Conversations, and this is a series on portfolio growth. So what are we thinking about today? Today we want to think about growing a portfolio through debt. Yes, you heard me right. We want to look at debt in different aspects so that we can be able to understand what really is this. Wait, did I say debt or something else? But stick with me. Why is debt important and why is debt something we need to talk about? It's because in the economy we live, there's a lot of debt happening. In fact, we got to a time where debt was becoming an issue. So we have to learn as people of faith, what is the role of debt? And the examples in scriptures that debt has been taken and the guide that we use when we're applying debt in our lives. So believe it or not, even as I mentioned debt, I'm breathing because all the examples I'm about to give you, debt was actually used when there was a crisis. Yes. So stay with me. Our first reading is from 2 Kings, from chapter 4, from verse 1 to 7. Now the wife of one of the sons of the prophets cried to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord. But the creditor has come to take my 2 children to be his slaves." And Elisha said to her, "What shall I do for you? Tell me, what have you in your house?" And she said, "The servant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil." Then he said, "Go outside, borrow vessels from all your neighbors, empty vessels, not too few. Then go in and shut the door behind yourself and your sons, and pour in all your vessels, and one is full, set it aside." So she went from him and shut the door behind herself and her sons. And as she poured, they brought the vessels to her. When the vessels were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another vessel." And he said to her, "There is not another." Then the oil stopped flowing. She came and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell, and pay your debts. You and your sons can live off the rest." Elisha was approached by a widow who is believed was probably the wife of one of maybe those he was training, an understudy of his, thought to have been Prophet Obadiah, and they were in a crisis. And at this juncture, Elisha guides her to take a debt by going to borrow the jar, but these jars were for a very specific purpose, that she would fill the oil in, and after filling the oil, she would sell the oil and live off the rest. We see that this is not supposed to recur. So even as we are going to use debt to build our portfolio, it has to be very defined that this is not going to recur, and it could very easily just come in at a point where we are a bit stuck. I remember listening to a conversation by a mature lady, and she was talking about when her and her husband started a business, and they knew everything was set, this business was good to go, only for them to get into the heart of it, and oh no, things did not pan out as they expected. And they had to take debt to be able to cover certain things so that the business would grow in the way they anticipated. So I want us to be very defined in that, even as we talk about debt and having it as one of the tools that we use to build our portfolio. Another key thing we get from here is accountability. And allow me to digress just a little because I know we have a varied audience. If you're in a place where you're working in partnership with someone, if you're married, it's with your husband, it's with your wife, if it's in business, it's with your co-founder. If you're in a board, it's with other board members. If you're in management, you're accountable to the people you lead. You have to work in openness. Because this is a lady who probably thought they were doing okay. And then it gets to the point the husband dies, and these guys are knocking at her door and they're like, let's have the children. So we have to work in openness. We have to work in accountability so that the portfolio that we are building does not remain as a burden to those who are part of our lives, but it becomes a way for them to be lifted. I remember again having a conversation with someone, and this is the context of Kenya, where they were part of a company they had incorporated. Then one of the people in the company decides to do some tax registration. And this tax registration creates such a problem for all the other company co-directors. So it's very important to have that accountability as you grow your portfolio, whatever direction you choose to grow it in. So come with me to another scripture. And this is from Luke, chapter 16, from verse 1 to 3. And it says, allow me to say the title for this one, the parable of the dishonest manager. He also said to the disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. And he called him and said to him, what is this that I hear about you? Turn in the account of your management, for you can no longer be a manager. And the manager said to himself, what shall I do since my manager is taking the management away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do, so that when I am removed from management, people may receive me into their houses. So summoning his master's debtors, one by one, he said to the first, how much do you owe my master? He said, 100 measures of oil. He said to him, take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, and how much do you owe? He said, 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, take your bill and write 80. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness, for the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their generation than the sons of light. How? So again, we see debt coming up, and it's coming up in two directions. This manager is supposed to manage the debt and the well-being of his master. He does not steward it well. And then he gets to a point where he's to be held to account, and he still finds another way to get himself out of this trouble. Why is this important? Crisis. This manager has found himself in a crisis, and it's hard to find a way to maneuver the debts that he's supposed to manage so that he can be able to get himself a soft landing. And I say this because I'd like us to be really cautious and alert to debt, even as we may elect to have it as part of our portfolio. Another scripture I'll refer to is from the book of Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7, which says, the debtor is a servant to the lender. Anytime you have someone's money, you owe them. Another scripture that I'd like us to refer to is Romans 13:8, which says, owe no man any debt but the debt of love. Two other scriptures, Proverbs 20:16 and 27:3, which says, take the coat of him who is quick to be in surety. So we have to understand that debt has a designated assignment, debt has a designated timeline. And debt, yes, can be part of building a portfolio, but you have to have a roadmap. You have to have a debt ceiling. You have to understand the cost of debt. Today we know that there are various types of debt. I could have consumer debt. We are not growing a portfolio with consumer debts. To buy a TV, to buy the latest car, to travel, that's out. But we could have constructive debt, and that is debt that we plan for. That is debt that when we look at the cost of taking that debt to grow our portfolio vis-a-vis the return we make. The return we make will pay the debt off, pay the cost of debt, and still give us a gainful return towards the growth of our portfolio. Then that makes sense. So for example, what? I could right now meet someone who tells me, by the way, I have a 10-acre piece of land that I'm selling and that is ready to go. It is developed. It has properties for rent. And I'm like, whoa, I don't have 10 million. What will be my return? Out of that 10 million that I'm putting in, within a span of 3 months, 6 months, it's calculated what will my return be. Then I go and look at what would be the cost of taking 10 million to pay for this particular property cash. I find out and I realize, if I take this, within a period of 2 years, I will already have repaid a debt. 10 million is a debt you take for 5 years or so. So within a period of 2 years, I will actually have repaid that debt. It makes sense. So you have to really think through certain things when it comes to debt. And I'll use an interesting example. From the book I've been reading on Warren Buffett's investment strategies, one of the things a certain company did, they were asked as a group to value a company. They valued the company. They saw that this company was actually undervalued. So they could get it as a bargain, but it was still like a good price, which they couldn't raise. So they took a debt for that, bought this value at this company at the undervalued price, raised the value of the company so they could now trade it at its correct value and paid off the debt. So there's a bit of strategy at play, and we have to be very alert to make sure that we are doing it in a way that will grow our portfolio to where we want it to go. So we're not taking loans on apps that are small scale loans that we haven't planned for. We are actually taking time to do a roadmap. We are actually taking time to prepare for debt. I may want to take debt, but I have to look at what are my finances. Can I be able to manage this debt now? Or I have to wait until a given period of time. One of the things I'm growing in my portfolio is a business in selling African fabrics. And we all know if we're in retail and wholesale, you do get advanced credit, a month, 2 months, 3 months. But the last time when I was speaking to the supplier and they wanted to advance me credit, I said no, because I realized that we cannot take this credit line at this juncture. We need to balance off other payments that the business needs to make. And this needs to be key. It also means to grow your portfolio through debt, you have to be on top of your numbers. You have to take time to look at the numbers to make sure that they make sense, so that then you can be able to use this route or route to grow your portfolio. Thank you so much for listening. It's amazing to share these nuggets with you, and I know that they are productive. It's Ahawo. God bless you.